Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We're going to be covering mitigating supply chain pitfalls with e-commerce and with EDI, two major components to any manufacturer or distribution supply chain. My name is Ryan Poliniak. I'm a senior account executive with Western Computer. We're a Microsoft Dynamics 365 implementation and support partner, focus in the manufacturing and distribution verticals and areas, and EDI and e-commerce are very common needs for our clients. So we've got a few of our key partners here on the line. I'll let Tom and Chris introduce themselves.
Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Fleury, Chief Commercial Officer at Znode. Znode is the leading B2B e-commerce platform, and I lead a team of people where we help customers increase efficiency, improve customer experience, and grow their revenue online.
Awesome. And hey, everybody, my name's Chris Panton. I'm one of the senior sales reps at TrueCommerce. I've been with the business for 13 years and over that time developed a really good understanding of EDI, the requirements that are pushed down to vendors from retailers, and also, a great understanding of the integration that TrueCommerce can provide with Microsoft ERP systems. So two strengths of our business that we really focus on, and excited to review some of those details with the group today.
Thanks, Chris. And so here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about some of the challenges that we see our clients face, and I'll kind of lead that as the ERP implementation firm. We kind of gather pain points and objectives for an implementation, and we have our partners here on the line that can help us meet those. And then I'll let Tom and Chris get into some of the details of how TrueCommerce and Znode can fill those pain points. And you heard integration there in the intro, and that's really what it all boils down to. So we'll get to some Q&A at the end. If you have a question, put it in the Q&A pane. We will be recording this webinar. If anybody wants to come back and have a look at it or distribute it internally, I think everybody that registered should get a link for it and be able to view it after the fact. So getting into our agenda here. We work at Western Computer with manufacturers and distributors all the time. It's been kind of the focus of our business for going on over 20 years now. Companies that create finished goods or distribute finished goods through various channels make up the lion's share of our customer base. And so we hear EDI challenges. We hear it with working with big box retailers and communicating with 3PLs. We hear e-commerce challenges, and sometimes those challenges come from selecting solutions in a silo. The CRO went and picked an e-commerce solution, and the marketing team picked a marketing solution, and the sales director picked a CRM, and somebody in supply chain picked EDI, and now we need ERP, and it all has to work together. That's a challenging way to do it. Looking at these types of solutions holistically and understanding what works together would be certainly preferable. So on the e-commerce side in particular, what do we see? I mean, it really boils down to integration, like anything else. Integration is out of the box, with TrueCommerce, and that's a very important point. You do all your mapping in your EDI solution, but you need it to talk to your ERP, and that oftentimes is not the case. So you've got to make sure that you have the automation there where you are getting your orders in and you're getting your shipping notices out. You've got to make sure that from an e-commerce standpoint, if a customer comes in and creates an order in your e-commerce, that is going to flow through to your ERP. Commonly, we've got multiple channels. We've got different sites, different channels in terms of B2B versus B2C. You've got to have credit card processing and sales tax and all of this tied into your business processes so that your customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, can have visibility to inventory levels and not just what products you have, but what actually you have available, so that they have visibility into pricing, so that they are going to be able to pay for their order, and then so that all of that information flows seamlessly into your ERP. So really giving customers that ability to to be self-service. Manufacturing presents even more complexity. You've got serialization, and this happens in the distribution industry as well. You've got different variants of items. You've got multiple warehouses, and really you need to have visibility across a variety of third-party tools, variety of fulfillment methods. You've got a really critical moment there when your customer's on an e-commerce site. And if they've got problems navigating the site, they don't have pricing, the e-commerce site is not reflecting reality in terms of, delivery times or availability, you're going to end up with disgruntled customers. In a B2C environment, a lot of times they'll go somewhere else. In a B2B environment, you may lose that customer long term, and we all know it's more expensive to go find a customer than it is to keep one happy. So we've got to have all of that availability in the e-commerce mirrored in terms of reality in what's in your ERP system. So B2B, B2C, if you're selling both and you've got different pricing or different workflows or different product availability, and you're trying to mirror this for your B2B site and your B2C site, there are tremendous challenges there. And so if maybe you've got distributors, but you also sell direct to your clients, these are very different e-commerce solutions that need to be in place. You may have some similarity on the ERP side that needs to be presented differently to both of those companies. When it comes to EDI, EDI is something that we see all the time. You see Target and Kroger on here on the slide. Absolutely. The Home Depots and the Costcos of the world. The big box retailers are going to require EDI. And not only are they going to require EDI, but they're going to require that you fall into their rules for EDI and meet them. Otherwise, you're going to have penalties. You're going to have chargebacks, and you may not even be eligible as a vendor if you're not complying with these big box retailers in terms of what they are demanding as you send them orders. So all of your POs, your 850s, your 810 invoices, your 856s, it's got to be integrated and it's got to be standardized. And having a solution that's natively integrated to your ERP is tremendous value there. So you don't want to have a process where you're manually entering this and managing exceptions and workarounds. That is a tremendous drain internally on your organization, and it is typically going to cost tremendously more to try to use brute force and to use internal resources to manage EDI compliance and to manage errors than it is to trust a company like TrueCommerce, who handles this on your behalf and make sure that everything is working appropriately and allows your people to focus on your core business, manufacturing product, distributing product, getting product out the door, and keeping your customers happy. And so with that, I think we're going to start with Chris on the EDI side. And, in terms of speaking to some of those pain points that we had, how TrueCommerce and their Foundry platform can fit into helping distributors with some of those problems. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And Ryan did a great job of really introducing, kind of like the two buckets of challenges that we see with EDI, and challenges that we see, but also I'd say the things that I get asked the most about when new folks are reaching out to TrueCommerce and trying to understand how we can help their business with an EDI solution that would integrate to Microsoft. That's compliance with EDI standards, and then the integration with D365. So I'm going to start here, talk about compliance just for a little bit, help the group understand how we make that really simple. And then I'm going to start to get a little granular with D365 integration. I've got a couple screenshots to show what that looks like for a user in the ERP itself. But anybody who's been in EDI, whether you're seasoned with it, you've been using it for years at a business, or it's brand new to you, it can appear challenging. It can appear IT heavy and complex, right? At the end of the day, a company is asking to send you a very specific asterisk limited text file that you not only have to be able to translate, but now that's your order and you need to be fulfilling in line with their guidelines against it. So whether you have retailers that you're working with, distributors, wholesalers, right? Consider those kind of the customers that might have EDI standards for you. You might work with a third-party warehouse for fulfillment that wants to exchange electronically, EDI being a big option these days. Or maybe it's your supplier community, right? You're starting to sell more online, trying to increase the breadth of products that you have, which means more suppliers that you're talking to, a bigger need for speed, a bigger need for visibility for inbound shipments when that data is coming, from a direct-to-consumer shipment that you're starting to use more and more. From a TrueCommerce standpoint, that is our bread and butter. When you work with a seasoned EDI provider like TrueCommerce, we've built a very vast library, tens of thousands of companies, where we already know their EDI transaction sets. And I'd say that's the one nice thing about EDI. If a company has a template that they want to use to send you a purchase order, it's a fixed template. It's generally what they use with everybody. So Walmart, Kroger were mentioned in the previous slide. If you had 50 retailers, big box retailers that you're selling your product into, some major distributors, a couple wholesalers, I've probably got all of them pre-built on the TrueCommerce network. I already know their standards. I know what that order looks like when it needs to come in. So as a user, you don't have to worry about EDI maps. You don't have to see EDI code. All of that inbound EDI data comes into a central hub, whether it's from a customer, maybe a shipping advice from a third-party warehouse, or even a shipment information or an invoice from a supplier. All of that comes into a central hub where it's converted, translated to plain English for you. But more importantly, now that we've kind of checked the box with EDI compliance, you're receiving the data you need to see, it's coming in on time, it's being translated. The bigger question is, how can we complete that end-to-end solution with the integration in Microsoft? We're going to talk about that a little bit more here. I think we're good for the next slide. Excellent. There's a lot of detail here. I'm not going to read through it line by line, but this is very specific to the EDI integration that we provide with D365 for F&SCM. I'm going to cover a couple key important pieces here, and then we're going to start to look at what it really, what the solution looks like to a user. So I think the first thing that's important to convey is this is a pre-built solution developed in-house by TrueCommerce. It was released right around the same time D365 itself was released, I believe in 2018. And it's, like I said, a proprietary piece of software. It's certified by Microsoft, which means that we have to go through, a rigorous approval procedure to be listed on the app source. And that's a little screenshot that I have there on the right-hand side, just showing our product on the app source, which means not only is this pre-built, certified by Microsoft, an app that you can download into the ERP itself. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment here. But we're staying within compliance to Microsoft as well. So whether it's one of the two big yearly releases or updates or general code changes, we get a pre-release from Microsoft. We're mandated to be in compliance with any new updates 60 days in advance of it going out to actual users. So partnering with us means you get a pre-built solution that's always in compliance with Microsoft standards. But the really cool thing here is that we have a very unique approach to integration. We do not use OData or DMF to import and export data, our EDI received data, out of the ERP. Why is that important? Number one, it helps with performance. OData is can be throttled a little bit from an integration standpoint, and we use a custom code package where that integration is bypassing it. We can integrate data with D365 as fast as F&O or F&SCM can process it itself. But it also means that we don't have to have a big clunky middleware external to the ERP. A lot of times with EDI providers, that EDI hub that's doing all the translation is also the point that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting with getting data in and out of the ERP itself. That also means that users might have to live in that external portal when you're dealing with things like exceptions, right? A customer sends you a different price, or the shipment that the third-party warehouse sent out has less items than it should have. You want to be able to have that data centralized within the ERP, and that's what we provide with our integration. That last bullet point there, when we talk about visibility, this package that we have that's pre-built for F&SCM gets deployed directly into the ERP. So that inbound translated EDI data goes into the ERP itself, and that's where your users would be able to manage the data. Really trying to provide an experience here that is built for business users and not really relying on the IT users of a business, right? And if we move ahead here, we've got a really high level look at what we're talking about. So we're in F&O. That EDI tab on the bottom left is the TrueCommerce product. It's been deployed, it's been installed. And within each of the implementations we have, we'll license out the different mailboxes that are required depending on who your EDI requirements are with. Right here, we're looking at the AR mailbox. So somebody who's connecting into some of those customers, like a retailer, wholesaler, a distributor, no matter what type of order they're sending you, no matter what that code looks like, right, their template for EDI ordering, that's going to come into that inbound sales order mailbox already in the ERP. So users would go there, they would view the EDI orders just like they would view other orders that you're receiving outside of EDI. And you would go through your normal process and dynamics to acknowledge that order, to ship it, to be ready to build the order. And from our standpoint, as you're going through those steps, that triggers the integration on our side. When I say it triggers the integration, it triggers the outbound documents, right? When we're sending an order acknowledgement back to the retailer, when we're sending the advanced ship notice, when we're sending the invoice, and being assured that all that outbound data is exactly in the format that those retailers are expecting it, because we already have those templates, behind the scenes. So this is a nice look at the AR mailbox. If you look a little bit beneath that, we had there's an AP section, a warehouse section, inventory. The message here is just all of the different EDI transactions that you're typically going to see with its customers, with third-party warehouses, with suppliers that you would order from. We already have pre-built integrations. We already have those mailboxes ready to go in the ERP. Okay. And we'll take it one step further here and give you a little bit of a look at what it looks, of what a user might experience, coming into the EDI module with TrueCommerce. So you'll see that's where we are in F&O, the EDI module, the accounts receivable tab. We're looking at the inbound sales order mailbox. And what we've tried to highlight here is to say, hey, this is where the data would be validated as well, right? When you're getting orders from these different customers, you want to make sure that they're ordering with the right price. Maybe that they're ordering the right item, right? You want to make sure there's not an old item, right, that you've retired. If they're sending an address code, you want to make sure that's being translated to the physical address. This is where all of that data massaging happens. But the really unique thing about the product is those errors and warnings that are caught, like we've got in that right-hand red box there, they're visible in an easy-to-read format where a business user could read them and take action on that error or warning, all within D365 without leaving the ERP. And one of the things that we review with different customers that we onboard is those errors and warnings themselves, how we'd configure those, right? The rules that you have to validate data coming in from different retailers. All of that is managed in the ERP. It's through a series of drop-down menus, extremely easy to navigate and set up. Also easy for you or TrueCommerce to help you with changing down the road. So, we're checking the box for EDI compliance, but really trying to check a box for ease of use with integration to D365, right? You don't need to be thinking about EDI. You come into the ERP, you come into our mailbox, you've got your inbound orders for the day. Any errors or warnings would have been sent to you ahead of time. You'd be able to view them in the ERP and manage them right here, which is pretty powerful. Okay. And that's, I'd say, a good summary of the high level approach that TrueCommerce can bring to the table with tackling the challenges that Ryan brought up. When we look at EDI compliance, but also when we look at being able to provide a seamless integration with D365. It's a pre-built solution that's really made for business users, so we don't have to rely on IT folks just for the day-to-day usability of EDI. We've got pre-built connections with nearly any retailer, wholesaler, distributor, warehouse out there that's using EDI, but we also have a menu of connection options. So we haven't talked about it too much here, but if you've got somebody that wants to exchange data outside of EDI, like a customer with an XML order, CSV template, a PDF attached to an email. If it's a consistent file, we can grab that data in to our integration and be able to help you process the data further. And then the last thing I'll mention is we talked about with Microsoft specifically, we're always in compliance. And from, for any of the users out there that are a little more savvy with EDI and say, hey, I really like the integration here, but I want to make sure it's not a black box. want to see how things are mapped. I'd like to make changes if I feel empowered to. Absolutely. So not something we got into here. It's a little bit more of an advanced feature, but if you want EDI to ERP mapping, visibility, and control, that's absolutely on the table with TrueCommerce. So hopefully this was helpful, giving a little background to the business and our solution.
Thanks, Chris. Very helpful. We'll turn it over to Tom. Let him chat a little bit more about some of the things that we see from the e-commerce side for manufacturers and distributors.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. Nice job, Chris. Yeah, when we talk about, obviously what we're really talking about at the end of the day is automating orders, right? Automating the way that revenue comes in. And certainly EDI is a piece of that. What we see in B2B e-commerce, which is different than B2C, is that there's a lot of complexity. So if you just think about, everybody is aware of B2C e-commerce. We're all consumers. Typically speaking, in B2C, there's one price list. It's the MSRP pricing. Typically, there's smaller catalogs, but there's just one catalog. If I'm going to a retailer's site, I get the retail price and I get the general catalog, and then I can filter by product type, gender, etc. But it's pretty simple. There's not a lot of transactions going on with the ERP other than to push an order through. But it's a lot different in B2B. Manufacturers and distributors have much more complex needs. Some of that complexity even starts with simple things like M&A. There's a lot of roll-up going on in both manufacturing and distribution right now, which means that these companies are probably running multiple brands. They have to have multiple product launches. They may even have multiple ERPs, which has its own set of complexities. A lot of these companies, if you ever talk to a manufacturer, a lot of manufacturers say, well, we don't need e-commerce. We sell through distributors. But the reality is, if they would expose their catalogs globally, they'd get a lot more distributors selling their products globally. Or they might get inbound leads for their products and they could start new distribution relationships in different regions of the world. Manufacturers also have the ability to enable dealers and distributors digitally. One of the things that we hear a lot is that distributors want to log into a portal and they want to be able to buy in bulk, right? That concept seems pretty simple, but we're going to get deeper into what that could possibly look like because it's more than just ordering in bulk, depending upon the type of products that are being sold. And then there's always marketplace channels, Grainger, Amazon Business, you name it, where they have to get those products out into the market. So Ryan, if we want to go to the next slide. So you take a look at what are the true needs? One, self-serve across channels. Chris just did a great job talking about the ability to have EDI as a self-serve mechanism for automating orders. But there's other channels that need to be managed as well. Traditional web stores, punch out, direct sales. Many years ago, Forrester Research said that e-commerce would be the death of the salesperson, but the reality is salespeople are still actively involved in all B2B or most B2B transactions, whether it's at a manufacturer level, enabling dealers and distributors, or whether it's a distributor, because it's a relationship-based business. And these people all have Rolodexes. That's an old school name or old term, but they have databases, CRMs of customers that they've worked with for 20 years, and they have inherent knowledge of those customers and how to help them. So, self-serve across channels, distributors, dealers, and marketplace. And one of the big things that we see is that both manufacturers and distributors have the ability to not only automate how orders are taken, automate some of the processes connecting their traditional offline sales with online sales, but increase adoption, increase customer experience through digital channels, and then ultimately grow. So how is that done? At Znode, when we talk about B2B e-commerce, it's much bigger than just a web store or just a portal into the ERP. There's so many different ways when we talk about multi-channel and B2B that need to be managed. So through one admin, through one database and connections to third-party systems like ERP, like FSC, Dynamics FSC, CRM, CPQ, etc. It's very easy for manufacturers and distributors through Znode to grow their business online and create better customer experiences and also automate a lot of those old processes, whether that's global commerce, whether it's traditional B2C, a simple MSRP price list, standing up portals. One of the big trends we're seeing right now in B2B e-commerce is manufacturers actually allowing their dealers to stand up a store on their behalf to sell their products to the end business. It's B2B to B or B2B to C. And why is that? A lot of dealers and distributors might be $10 million, $20 million businesses, and they don't have the capital to have their own e-commerce platform and their own e-commerce operations. But the end customer, the purchasing agent, or the person on the floor who's looking for products is still searching on their phone. They're still going to a website. They want to be able to connect with the brand. So it's a way to extend the brand through the dealers and distributors down to the customer. We talked a little bit about syndication. You've got your traditional B2B, B2B stores. Most distributors and dealers that are of size already run these. But the biggest opportunity here for integrating is also a portal experience. And I'm not talking just a portal experience, ordering in bulk, but something more of a single pane of glass where, again, we're bringing online and offline together. And that is allowing salespeople to go into a portal to look at all the accounts that they manage. Those accounts could be distributors or those accounts could be end customers. To take a look at all the orders in those accounts. And those orders could be coming in different ways. They could be coming in through the EDI channel, as Chris was talking about. They could be coming in through the web store. They could be coming in through a phone order that sales rep actually takes over the phone, but have a central place to see all of these orders, order history, etc. And then also to create orders on behalf of the customer. It's not uncommon in B2B because there's still salespeople involved that a sales rep may be managing a major account across multiple dealers or distributors. They have a large territory and they may be creating orders directly in a portal before they hit the ERP. It could be custom products. It could be products that have add-ons, etc. And so to manage all of that centrally is one of the areas where Znode really thrives, and not just the commerce portal as a center, but all of these different digital business models connecting to Microsoft FSC as well. If you want to go to the next slide, Ryan. So when we talk about the center of commerce, what Znode allows customers to do is, again, offer these different digital business models all centrally managed. So that could be the single pane of glass where salespeople log in, could also be where dealers, distributors, and customers log in, and based upon their role, they have different data that they can view, and they have different features and functions that they can actually enact. So a sales rep logged in may be able to manage quotes where a dealer logging in may request quotes, and they're working on a big project and they're pulling that project together in a portal. In that same platform, there's also the traditional B2B storefront. For a manufacturer, this could be a storefront that basically you're exposing your catalog globally and you're not showing pricing, or pricing's only shown after login, and it's a way to create new accounts for new distributors globally. And then a salesperson has to get on the phone and actually negotiate prices and sign them up. It could also be a B2C store as well, where they sell direct at MSRP pricing. And then the big thing is, once you have these types of systems up like Znode integrated with your e-commerce or with your ERP, there's the ability for self-serve. That end customer, that dealer, that distributor to log in, go to their My Account section, see all their past orders, refresh and order new. Maybe they have a wish list that they go to. Maybe they upload a template of products that they buy on a regular basis, or they subscribe to products. All of that can be centrally managed because, again, there's so many different channels in B2B, and having one place to go to manage all of that outside of the ERP is how you create a lot of efficiency, more adoption, greater customer experience, and more growth. And with that, Znode has a native commerce connector, which is a pre-built middleware. Because again, as Chris said, you don't want to have to buy a third-party middleware or something clunky in order to transact online. And so with that, within the Microsoft channel, Znode has the pre-built middleware with a connector framework specifically for FSC. And how does that work? The idea in e-commerce, especially in B2B, is that you don't want your e-commerce platform to just be a window into the ERP. Your e-commerce platform, you want to be able to manage these different channels. So you have to pull data in and out of the ERP. Sometimes those can be batch data where you're storing it in the e-commerce platform. Sometimes it's real-time calls, depending upon how often pricing changes. Certainly everything is account-based. And then sometimes it's pushes. It could just be pushing an order into the ERP. If that sales rep is in a portal experience, they finally win the big RFP, they sign off on the RFQ, and they push it into the ERP. So that is what Znode brings to the table in the Microsoft space with FSC and the ability to manage, I would say, multiple channels and multiple digital business models for e-commerce.
Great. Good overview, Tom. Good overview, Chris, as well. Do we have any questions in the Q&A? Let me pull the Q&A pane up. If there are any questions from the audience, feel free to go ahead and put them in now, and we'll go ahead and ask them and get them answered for everybody. So there's one in here that says, what is Western's process? So I could take that one, guys. Western Computer, we are the implementation partner, right? So we're working on the core ERP and we're working to identify prior to a project the needs of a company. That includes EDI, that includes e-commerce, and we're going to bring our partners in where applicable. We're going to collaboratively work through a project together with a Western Computer project manager kind of running the overall project plan and solution architecting, because again, you don't want to do these in a silo. E-commerce and EDI are central to the processes of a distributor or a manufacturer. You wouldn't want to implement your ERP system and then say, okay, let's move on to e-commerce next, and then we'll move on to EDI. You're going to have some rework to do. Just like if you're building a 5-story house and you're gonna build the first 2 stories today, you want to build your 5-story foundation from the beginning. So doing an analysis and a design that incorporates critical components like e-commerce and like EDI is a very important way to go about that. How long does this take? Now, that question, I'll probably let Tom and Chris answer that. And I think it's probably more variable with EDI, though it does vary with e-commerce as well. And from my perspective, EDI can commonly be the long pole in the tent is the term, right? The piece of project that you really need to do, you have to consider the timing of it, because you have to work with third-party vendors, you have to work with mapping, you have to understand how many trading partners you have. So I don't know, Tom or Chris, if you have any comments on duration of implementing Znode and or TrueCommerce, feel free to speak up on those.
Chris, why don't you go first and I'll follow up?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I think a really important piece of that question is when we look at the EDI scope to be implemented, is this part of somebody who's already live on the ERP and maybe you're unhappy with the provider, you want to switch them away?
Mm-hmm.
We'll call that, one category. But the second category is if you're implementing the ERP, from a net new standpoint. When we look at net new ERP implementations, generally, an EDI provider would like to be there testing as soon as you have customers' items ready in the ERP, and there would be a very tight focus to make sure that we are kind of coinciding with the ERP go live, right? It's a big move as a business to go live with an ERP. EDI can be kind of a big go live as well, but having that understanding of the time frame, usually with an ERP, we have several months. If the ERP is being implemented, we'll have several months of testing, and we can align there very nicely. But in instances where you're already live on the ERP and switching away, it depends on how many partners. To be live with one partner, my team is able to do that on an expedited timeline, like to meet some of these end of the year go live timelines for holiday season. We're talking about 4 to 5 weeks to get one partner set up and live. If you have 100 partners, it could be several months. But I think it's important to understand your time frame as well. Are there contracts to beat, milestones, dates where you need to have data ready? Because with EDI, it just comes down to testing and manpower. And if needed, we can add more resources to help with the implementation effort.
Yeah, Chris, that's a good summary. And just and one note on that from the implementation partner side, if you've got some constraints, around getting live on your ERP, and you need to say, well, maybe we go live with the 80/20 rule and the partners that, are most critical or that have most of our volume or that require EDI, we're going to go live with them first. We've seen that kind of thing, but it's best to get started early, and make sure to leave adequate time to get all of your trading partners set up.
Yeah, and I can jump in on the e-commerce side. I think it really all depends. Scope is always the big question. What we tend to see is the areas that take the most time in launching are the user experience, right? You always have marketing teams that want to make sure that everything is on brand. You want to have research about how customers are going to come to a website and how they're going to buy and what they care about. And the other big piece is integrations, which we've solved with Znode's direct connection or the commerce connector to FSC. The rest also comes down to the business model. As I shared, there's multiple ways to manage B2B e-commerce in multiple channels. So to stand up a simple web store, pull your product information in from FSC, pull in your customer specific pricing, etc. That's typically 3 to 4 months. But what we tend to see is that customers have a roadmap. First, they want to stand up a B2B web store that has account specific everything based upon login. Maybe next they want to stand up a portal where their salespeople can log in. They can order on behalf of customers. They can work with dealers to bid on large projects. I wouldn't look at it as like a one-time thing. I would look at it as, do you have the right platform for digital transformation, and what is your roadmap for digital transformation? And what are you going to do in the first 3 to 6 months, the next 6 to 12 months, and maybe even the next 2 to 3 years? We have a manufacturer who started selling aftermarket parts in North America. Then they stood up in EMEA. And then they stood up another region of the world. Now they're coming back to us saying, we sell through dealers. What can we do to give our dealers the ability to stand up their own stores? That wasn't part of the conversation in year one, but a couple of years now in, they're saying, wow, how can we move everything digital? So I wouldn't say look at it as a time frame. I would say look at the journey and where you want to be in the next 3 to 5 years, and then back out to what are the highest priority objectives in your digital transformation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And on the ERP side, which, I didn't really mention timing for that. I don't know if that's included in this question, but very similar to what Tom said, which is, what do you want to accomplish? What are the priorities? And what is your phasing strategy? Do you want to walk, crawl, and run and build upon a foundation? Or are there some more complex needs up front? A Dynamics 365 finance and supply chain management implementation can take 9 months on the low end, or it could take a couple years. It depends on scope and scale and a variety of factors. So there's some variability there. There's one more question that popped in while you were talking, Tom. Where are manufacturers and distributors in this journey?
All
That's
over the place.
all over the place. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
You go ahead. Go ahead, Tom.
I mean, what we're seeing is that about 83 to 85% of distributors, this is third-party data, already have e-commerce. But those e-commerce experiences are vary widely. And a lot of distributors jumped into e-commerce during COVID because they had to, because their sales reps could no longer get into doors. So now what we're seeing is this resurgence of, okay, we bought an e-commerce platform in an emergency situation. It wasn't the right one. But we've grown our revenue online, but now we're running into scaling issues. So we need to look for a new platform. Or we've gone through 3 acquisitions and our catalog size has gone from 500,000 SKUs to 3 million, and we have performance issues.
Yep.
So we need to upgrade. Manufacturers are a little bit late when it comes to e-commerce. They have traditionally relied on EDI primarily, and for good reasons. And now they're saying, well, wait a minute, we need to do something to enable our dealers, distributors, et cetera. So the data we have is most manufacturers, it's like 50 to 60% of manufacturers have some e-commerce strategy, and they're very, very early on. So all over the place, and I would say it's changing on an annual basis.
Absolutely. How about on the EDI side, Chris?
It's a great question. I think all over the place kind of sums it up quite nicely. When you think about EDI specifically, it comes back to that challenge that we heard at the beginning around like compliance, right? You have some manufacturers, distributors, companies that you want to connect to through EDI. What are their standards? What are their requirements? When you drill deeper in that into EDI, there's obviously differences in terms of the templates of the document, but some companies might require documents that others don't, right? Especially things like order acknowledgments or advanced ship notices. Maybe they want to send you an order change because that's something they frequently do in their business. Um, it's kind of built into the packet of EDI details that each company has. But the good news is, TrueCommerce is a provider. We work closely with all those different companies that have EDI standards. We've got those details pre-built, deployable to our customers. So, again, it's one of those instances where it can be all over the place, but if you have the right partner, from an EDI perspective, it's something you won't have to worry about.
Yeah. Yep. And from my perspective, it mirrors just what you guys are saying. We'll get somebody who comes to us looking to modernize ERP and to take that next step in the journey. And maybe there's an old antiquated EDI solution there, or an old custom website that's been, humming along and integrated to an antiquated ERP system. And there's oftentimes the thought that, okay, well, we're doing ERP, we want to look at e-commerce, we need a better EDI solution. And sometimes that's something that we'll suggest as well, rather than rebuilding older integrations to software that may have some pain points. We'll bring in Znode, we'll bring in TrueCommerce, and we'll recommend leveraging out of the box integrations for solutions that are built for Dynamics 365 and replacing those older components. And so we run into people all across the board. I do agree that manufacturers sometimes are a bit slower to adopt technology. You've got kind of the mindset of getting product out the door and being very focused on operations, but more and more, we're hearing it all the time in the manufacturing space. We need to increase our online presence. We need to streamline our order taking and communicate with our 3PLs. So it does vary quite a bit, but that's a good question. All right, guys.
Ryan and Chris, I was going to suggest if anybody following this webinar would like to see the connector framework that Znode offers, or the full integration that Chris could demo, we'd be happy to jump on a call and have Ryan join us as well and talk about the integration points across our 3 platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, Tom. Okay, well, I think that wraps up our time today. I don't see any additional questions. I'll give it one more look, but thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your time today. As Tom mentioned, we're more than happy to sync back up with you and answer your unique business challenges, right? Every company is a bit different. So we're glad to have a chat, and thanks for joining. We'll send the recording out, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.